Power rarely appears fragile while it is losing flexibility. Most systems look stable long after the moment when response itself begins to slow. Still collecting revenue, still commanding armies, still issuing orders that provinces still obey. The Mughal Empire in the second half of the 17th century offers one of history's clearest examples of this condition. A state at the height of its territorial reach, its administration still functioning in every visible sense, while the mechanisms that had once made it adaptable grew steadily less capable of responding to what the empire itself had become. This is not the story of the empire's fall. It is the story of the years in which its very success began to work against it. By the 1650s, the Mughal state governed one of the largest and wealthiest territories on earth, built on a system its founders had designed with remarkable flexibility. The Mansabdari system assigned nobles ranked military and administrative obligations in exchange for revenue assignments called jagirs, rotated periodically to prevent any single noble from building an independent regional base. Akbar and Shah Jahan had used this rotation, along with a centralized treasury and an extensive network of provincial governors, to hold a diverse and expanding empire together through calculated balance rather than uniform control. Aurangzeb inherited this structure intact in 1658, along with a treasury still solvent, an army still formidable, and a bureaucracy still capable of coordinating tax collection across provinces from Bengal to Gujarat. Nothing suggested weakness. The court issued decrees. The provinces obeyed them. Yet, the very system that had made the empire adaptable was approaching the limits of what it could continue to absorb. Provincial treasuries still reported upward through a hierarchy that had changed little in structure since Akbar's reign, even as the volume of business moving through it multiplied far beyond what that structure had been designed to carry. The first pressure came from scale itself. As Aurangzeb pushed Mughal authority deeper into the Deccan Plateau through the 1680s and 1690s, the empire's territorial reach expanded faster than its administrative machinery could extend behind it. Each new conquest required new jagir assignments to reward the nobles who had secured it, but the pool of productive land available for assignment did not grow at the same rate as the pool of nobles expecting reward. Provincial revenue officers found themselves managing jagirs that existed on paper but yielded less in practice than the assignments promised, and disputes over land quality and actual yield multiplied faster than the court's capacity to adjudicate them. What had once been a system of calculated rotation began to function as a system of accumulating obligation, each unresolved claim adding friction to a machinery designed for balance rather than volume. A second pressure followed from the war itself. The Deccan campaigns, intended to complete the empire's southern conquest within a few years, stretched across decades, and the court's mobile encampment, the enormous traveling capital that followed Aurangzeb through the region, became a fixture of imperial administration rather than a temporary wartime measure. Provincial governors elsewhere in the empire grew accustomed to issuing decisions without timely guidance from a court perpetually occupied with the Deccan, and local administrators quietly began exercising discretion the system had never formally granted them. Correspondence between provincial offices and the traveling court increasingly crossed months rather than weeks, a delay the original design had never anticipated when the empire's core territories sat closer to a stationary capital. This was not defiance. It was adaptation to a court that had become geographically and administratively remote from the empire it still nominally governed in full. Regional officials absorbed the consequences of this drift before the imperial center registered it as a pattern. Tax farmers in northern provinces delayed remitting revenue while awaiting confirmation of jagir reassignments that the traveling court had not yet finalized, and merchants adjusted their dealings to administrators whose authority seemed to shift with each unconfirmed rumor from the south. complaints and petitions moved slowly toward a court that relocated seasonally across hundreds of miles of Deccan terrain, filtered through layers of military and civil administration that had grown skilled at absorbing delay without resolving it. The bureaucracy that had once been the empire's defining strength, its capacity to coordinate distant provinces through a single responsive center, now functioned as a buffer that softened each provincial signal until it reached Aurangzeb diminished, one concern among the hundreds competing for his attention. Meanwhile, the financial demands of prolonged war reshaped the relationship between the court and its nobility. Mansabdars, who had once competed for prestigious postings, increasingly found themselves assigned jagirs stretched thin by military expenditure. Their expected revenue eroded by the same campaigns that were meant to expand their opportunities. Many began treating their assignments less as rotating service and more as territory to extract as thoroughly as possible before reassignment. A shift in behavior the system had not been built to accommodate. The court, wary of losing the loyalty this shift threatened, responded cautiously rather than structurally, granting exceptions, extending tenures, tolerating irregularities that the original design had explicitly sought to prevent. Each accommodation reduced friction in the moment while narrowing the flexibility available for the next dispute. Court secretaries maintained the same registers and procedures used a half-century earlier, recording exceptions as isolated cases, even as their number grew steadily large enough to constitute a pattern the administration had not yet named. Court records from this period reveal a growing volume of petitions requesting clarification of assignments, extensions, or exceptions, evidence not of collapse, but of a system straining to process demands that had outgrown its administrative capacity. Provincial clerks copied and forwarded these petitions through channels that had changed little since Akbar's reign, channels built for an empire a fraction of its current size. Decisions that once took weeks began taking months. The empire had not lost its authority. It had lost its margin for correction. By the final years of the 17th century, the strain remained largely invisible from a distance. Aurangzeb still commanded loyalty. Revenue still arrived, however delayed. Armies still marched when ordered, however stretched. But the instruments available to respond quickly to unexpected pressure, a sudden revolt, a poor harvest, a contested succession among provincial nobles, had narrowed considerably from what they had been under his predecessors. The Mansabdari rotation that once prevented regional entrenchment now moved too slowly to prevent it. The traveling court that once projected imperial presence now delayed the very responsiveness it was meant to preserve. Authority often appears strongest just before its choices begin to narrow. The Mughal state at the close of the 17th century still held every formal instrument of power: armies, treasury, ceremony, obedience, and yet the space in which it could respond to the unexpected had been quietly contracting for a generation. One delayed decision, one unresolved jagir, one accommodated exception at a time. History often changes long before anyone recognizes that it has changed. The pressure was visible to the officials who administered its consequences in the provinces. Whether the court itself understood how little room remained was a different question entirely. If this exploration stayed with you, you'll find more on timeless questions.